I believe the video stopped recording.
Well, now it says that the stream is live.
Yeah, but usually when I edit it, it keeps recording. That's great.
Yeah.
Hey again. If you guys are watching this on Friday, we did have about 10 minutes before this. Don't know what happened to it. Hopefully I'll be able to find it.
Yeah.
But no, it's just like I've never had such a weird, like sad, angry, just so many things hitting me all at one time. And I just want to just go break something right now.
Yeah.
But I did pop that full gummy. So in about 45 minutes, I'll be like,
great.
And then right after I got out here, I thought of if there was ever a time for me to pour a glass of bourbon, this was the time. Why didn't I do that? Hey, Susan's back. Grayson's here.
Let's see how long it takes me to find the YouTube video.
It may take
because I can't ever find it. Yes.
Gotcha.
Oh, I found it.
Right. Nice job, Zach.
Good work.
Oh, what I haven't.
I just want to be able to see the chat.
Minute to look at the questions. Oh, and I did have. I know. Did you catch the one somebody threw in kind of late about the West Memphis 3 case?
I have one. I have Jenna's note about the West Memphis 3. I saw that Lynn posted something, but I felt like if we were going to talk about West Memphis 3, we could just talk about this part of it.
True Crime Obsessed dropped their Patreon episode about the Eric McGinnis case from Benton Harbor. And it was really good. They did a good job on it.
Nice.
So very, very good job.
Poor Fiery. I just got here. Why are we mad?
So for you guys that are just joining us in the chat, you guys don't know this, you're not patrons, but for the patron pregame, we started real late because I was recording an interview here in the studio with some folks. And it was really emotional and really infuriating. And so and I had to go from like tears flowing down everybody's face, giving them a hug goodbye, to turning it on the stream. And I haven't, my everything hasn't come down from that yet.
Yeah.
So I'm just shaking it off. We're just shaking it off. We're shaking it off.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to not let my anger about that spill into the stuff we're talking about in the follow-up.
Okay.
1 second. I'm texting Damien in case we talk about that. I don't know what else is on the follow-up. I've been crazy with everything.
Hey, we do have an off-the-air question from a listener, and it's not exactly right yet, but I'm going to bring it up anyways. How was your first day of school? I know kids aren't back, but how was your first day of school?
Oh yeah, so thank you, Chris, for my new class. I didn't start teaching today. This week, today, tomorrow, and the next day are professional development days. So if you've ever been in not just a school, any government, and done days of meetings, it was like that.
So great. So awesome. High energy, fun, useful.
High energy too. They always like to be like everybody that runs these types of meetings always goes to some conference somewhere where they say, here's the buzzwords for this year, and here's the games and icebreakers to play.
Yes.
And then this will get everybody excited. And and maybe other people like that stuff, but I'm just coming from industry. I've been in government and then in industry and then now back in government. I have a real value for how time is being spent. So all I can think when we're playing like a game that's an icebreaker is, isn't there something productive we could be doing with this? That's just my own personal bias.
Yeah.
But it was all right. And Susan says, no one likes it. That seemed to be the vibe. There was discussions about it afterwards. We played a game where, and it's like an actual game. That you buy, but like everybody gets this little card. It's a circle and it's got like 6 or 7 images on it. I think it's called Spot It or something. And then we had to get up in the room and the whole district is there. And then you have to go find a stranger and then you flip your cards over and then you have to find a thing on their card that matches your card. And whoever finds it first gets a point. And then you take their card and then you go find another person and you do that for 15 minutes.
All right.
I lost.
This is no Tuesday night trivia, and I'm sorry to bring up a painful subject
Also,
for bringing up Tuesday trivia. I shouldn't have said that.
Also, Erica.
He's already upset.
I know.
Erica and her family
didn't
are
think
playing
that through.
trivia without me right now.
I know. I didn't think it through because I'm also exhausted and I have no voice. So I'm.
Sorry. What are you up to? I don't know if you guys.
Nothing. I just
when I bailed out.
Yeah. No, I just did a con over the weekend, and I keep losing my voice because I'm talking so much, and I'm clearly not good at protecting it enough. So. I've just been like,
where was this one? Are you still jet lagging, or was this one?
No, this one for a change was actually in my time zone. It was up in San Jose. So
you talked about that last
week. Great. Yeah. That part of it was great. It was great. It was a great experience. It's just, there's just when you're busy, you realize like, oh, I just talked loudly and emotionally for 8 hours straight, if not 10 hours. And like,
Oof.
I woke up yesterday and was like, ooh, and then today.
And besides that, people don't understand. Like Becky is like, if we'd go to like a crime con or something where I do like 3 or 4 presentations during a day, and I would be so exhausted. And she was like, some people, they don't understand, like, why are you so tired? You were just standing there. That's all you were doing. Not that like Becky wasn't giving me attitude, but like legitimately, like, I don't like, why is that making you? It's like, you don't understand what happened when you're doing something that requires your brain to be in overdrive.
Yeah.
For that long, it's like, to me, I would rather run all day than do that all day, because at the end of the day, my brain is just like, I'm done now. That's as much thinking as I'd like to do for the next month, please.
Yeah.
And then I don't think for a month. That's how I handle it.
Yeah.
I just stop thinking.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that plan of attack.
Yeah.
Hey, when you guys hear the ad in the follow-up on Friday, and I advertising for the Soul gummies, just know that about 20 minutes ago, or 10 minutes ago, I just popped one of them suckers. So if I seem much more chill about 20 minutes from now, then that ad's for real.
Great. All right. This is the test. The live on air test.
I've used the clock.
I've used them for someone who doesn't generally use that. I've used them a few times, and they do exactly what they say they do.
Yeah.
You should, if it works the way it's supposed to work, you should re-record the ad to say, and drop it in right wherever you start to chill out, and be like, if you notice my change right now.
Yes, before and after. Absolutely.
Tool Girl, the brand is Soul. It will be in the description of the follow-up because they are actually a sponsor.
Great.
Yeah, really like those.
Very cool. Yeah, I have some too, but I won't say what they are because I don't know about the Soul brand.
Yeah.
I have an unnamed brand that I also like that's microdosed.
They're Soul.
Sure. Yes. 100%. Yes.
Every dose for me is a microdose.
I didn't know. Did you know that? So I have family that lives in states where marijuana is illegal, and they just like go buy shit. Like my whole family, the elder part of my family, is all taken to drinking these like drinks, like a soda pop.
Yeah.
But it's like with THC in it, and they're getting it in like Indiana where it's illegal. And then I just learned that apparently there's some law now where like hemp derived THC is legal everywhere.
Yeah, it's a loophole. I just experienced that in both Tennessee and North Carolina. There are dispensaries that sell this specific kind. I'm sure there are people in the chat who know it's like THC-3 or something, and it just has to do with like a heating point and harvesting before XYZ, but it's still, I mean, it seems like it's still getting people high and stuff. So yeah, it seems like definitely seems like it's.
Oh yeah, my one nephew, he's real high all the time, and he's like, I'm like, how are you doing that in Indiana? And he's like, this is the legal stuff, man.
Yeah. Great.
Does Tool Girl stuff North Adams has dispensary? I have no idea, but I'm real looking forward to going to the Berkshires. A few people emailed me to let me know. Berkshires. It's Berkshires.
Yeah, I guess I could have corrected you, but I thought it was really funny.
I feel like I say Berkshires, but I think when I was enunciating the web address,
Berkshire comedy,
nope,
no,
podcast festival,
Berkshire podcast festival.
I feel like I was just enunciating that way so people knew how to spell it.
I feel like you feel like that.
I hope that's what happened. Hey guys, since I feel completely super anxious, angry, a little bit sad, and completely unprepared, I think let's start the show.
Ooh, I love it.
What do you think?
Best intro ever.
I gotta hit a button today.
Well, yeah, but not yet, because first we have to end the pregame. Pregamers, sorry this was short. It just sometimes this kind of stuff happens. Hopefully it won't happen again next time. But we love you guys, and we'll talk to you pregamers next week.
Yay.
Peace out.
Stupid.
That's all I am. That's all I am.
All right, now Zach, you get to push. We're all gonna push our buttons.
Yeah.
We're gonna record. I'm recording.
Recording.
I touched the button. I touched the button.
Are you recording?
Ooh.
I am.
And you get to clap too for Erica. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Nice.
You're on, Zach.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I got excited. Ahoy, friends. Thank you for tuning into Truth and Justice. You are listening to the Friday follow-up for Season 15, Episode 8, The Ear Witness. This week, we heard a wild story of how Jody was connected to the scene of the crime based on an ear witness who claims to positively identify Jody's car based on the sound of the car. This episode, for a lot of us, had us thinking, and it's also left us with a lot of questions. I'm joined today by Bob and Janet, and the three of us are here to dive into it all.
We just need a minute.
Yeah, that was rough.
What?
I don't know.
Oh my God, Zach, your is the funniest thing I've ever heard.
All right, I'm gonna come right in here, Erica. Just so after Zach's beautiful, perfect intro, we go right into this. All right, yeah, this episode was it was bananas, and it much like every other element of this case we've covered. I get into it thinking it's a little bit odd, and then end up with what the hell is going on here. And we'll get into all that. I do guys want to let you guys know that this Sunday's episode, I mentioned this last week. So this week is the week that I go back to school to teach. I'm doing like all of our professional development and stuff like that. But it's also the week where I'm moving both Quentin and Bella into college on 2 different nights. And then there's, of course, the night that we're recording this follow-up now on Tuesday nights. And it's Erica's first week being full-time and doing most of the legwork to build the episodes out. So what we decided to do this week to give ourselves a little bit of a buffer is to do just an interview for this week's episode, which is something that we've been kind of trying to kind of figure out how to fit in. As we said from episode 1, once we learned this is a much bigger story than just Jody's case, I want to get into some of the other stories in Benton Harbor. There's one that I have mentioned here on the podcast in previous episodes that is near and dear to my heart. A former student of mine was shot and killed by the Benton Harbor Police Department in 2016. And so I invited his mother into the studio tonight. Actually, on Tuesday night, we recorded the interview. And actually, for those that are around for the pregame, I'm a little out of sorts right now. It was extremely, extremely emotional for a whole lot of reasons. For me, and then we went right into recording this. So if my brain doesn't seem to be functioning quite right, that's why. But so that's going to be Sunday's episode. It's not going to be about Jody's case. It is going to be about a different case, a case where a person was shot and killed by the Benton Harbor Police Department. And as usual, it's another crazy story. There's more to it than meets the eye. There's a lot more going on there than I thought was going on there based on what the official word from the police and the news was back when this happened. So that's what's going to be coming on Sunday. So for one, I wanted to tell this story. I promised the people in this community that I'm going to help them tell their stories and try to help make a change in their community. And also this was a perfect time to do it because we just don't have time. I have 0 time this week to work on writing out a full episode. So that's what's coming on Sunday. This episode, The Ear Witness, what'd you guys think?
I thought it was really good. There was, sorry, Zach.
Go for it.
There was a lot of information in this episode as well. I felt like you were in a position, you and Erica were in a position this last week where there was a lot of information to disseminate, but it didn't need to jump around quite as much as trying to fit everything together for the week before. I felt like it was really clear. You took us through, I think, kind of a great example, great, I guess, in air quotes, but kind of a classic example of watching how, again, we see these testimonies, we see these quote unquote interviews being shaped in a certain direction that feels very textbook to kind of what you see when you see wrongful convictions, and the way things get massaged and how information gets added and subtracted as benefits, the people who are doing the twisting. It was really, really interesting. And it was an interesting addition to what we already knew about the Miles family and all of that.
Yeah. And sorry, hang on one second. Forgot what I was going to say. Also, I want to point out, this is some of there are people that as soon as we get into a case, and particularly in the crowd that wants to prove that I'm wrong about everything ever, always. As soon as we start covering a case, they try to find everything about the case and then throw it out and talk about it. And in this one, there are people that they keep wanting to go find documents from appeals that are referencing the trial, so that they can say, well, this person, for example, in last week's episode, someone weeks ago had been like, well, Canvas Smith said that she saw Jody driving around stalking Mario all day. Like, why aren't you telling your audience that? Stuff like that. And then there's a reason why, number one, we just don't jump ahead because we try to cover everything in detail. But also, all of those, anything you get from an appeals document or anything you get on the news is all coming from the trial. And that's kind of the reason why in this episode we formatted it to say, okay, let me tell you what the trial said. Now let's show you how we got there, because that's the story it didn't tell. So when you read the appeal document that says Canvas, there's a witness that says she was with DeMario and Jody was following them all evening. That seems pretty damning. But then when you hear the actual story and how that changed and how that evolved and how that's impossible for that to be true, then it paints the picture much more clear. And that's kind of the same thing that we saw here with Victoria Miles. In the newspaper articles and stuff that was going on then, it was someone was able to identify the car. They saw the lights. They heard the motor, and then you don't hear how the whole story evolved. So that's why we wait. What do you think, Zach?
How in the world is ear witness like a thing? How is that able to be put into court? Like, that is baffling to me, that they can actually say that that's something.
The thing is, everything, the juror is the finder of fact, right? So the reason stuff like that gets in is the judge just says, well, it's up to the jury if they believe it or not. But there is, and this is where I've said, we've always said that, the way our Constitution is written on paper, the prosecution has the burden of proof, right? And it's not the defense's job to prove their innocence. But what's not written in the paper is the reality of the bias that most people have, that assume when they go in, the cops have the right person, the cops are the honest ones, the prosecutors are the honest ones, and we can believe them. So if they think this is important, it must be important. And I think that's how some of the stuff slides through. But it's like, I didn't catch it till I kind of did a little rewrite on it when I caught the part where I mentioned it's kind of analogous to if you put 5 white guys and 1 black guy in a police lineup and then say which one was the guy that did it. I didn't catch it until the second time through that Lenny Williams, when he identified the car, where they said he couldn't even hear the second car go by, but then identified the first one. So like they put a car that has no exhaust problems whatsoever and have that drive by, and then one that has an exhaust problem and say, which one was it? Like you have to factor all that stuff in the veracity of the testimony.
Yeah. I see a lot of comments in the chat about how did the jury take that seriously? And I saw Grayson on our Facebook post essentially saying, like, how did this conviction happen? But I think we've talked about this before, but like you just said it, there's so much trust that comes with what the state is presenting, with what the police say happened, with what the prosecution is alleging. The fact that the person is sitting in that hot seat in the first place just lends this instant credibility that it's not supposed to, but it definitely does. And all you need is a few people saying, oh yeah, da-da-da-da, like, yes, this is a thing. And if you're not, if you're the defense and you don't have time to prepare, or if you are overworked and underpaid, or if you are just not invested, then I feel like, yeah, we want the defense to shred things to pieces, but so often in these cases, it just doesn't happen.
Well, that's the thing, is a combination of things. I don't think White did a particularly good job of cross-examining anyone, including Victoria Miles. We touched on that in the episode. But also, like, there's a reason why Sonia Lucas this is kind of to answer Grayson's question. how did this happen? There's a reason that I titled the Sonia episode "The Linchpin," because that was the one thing where she stood up on that stand and said, as he was dying, he looked me in the eye and said, "JoJo did it." That's pretty damning. So if you take any of the pieces alone, maybe they don't mean so much. That one's pretty damning, but it's still, like I said, it's kind of hearsay that seems a little, But then here comes the other witness that says, I saw the person running away and they were tall and skinny and had a ponytail.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I heard the car. That's the same car. And I saw the lights. It's the same car. Now you start piecing those together, and now all of a sudden it seems like a solid case.
Sure.
The idea that they did it so long after too, it just doesn't even seem feasible that you could. You're picking out a loud car, like you said. They put a car out there that had muffler problems and one that didn't, or two that didn't. But like to actually be able to say yes, that's the car based on noise 6-8 months later, whatever it is just bonkers to me.
Yeah, and also it just, I don't know, something in the chat just reminded me of this. And I don't know if there's a question about it because I haven't had a chance to look over them yet, but I do want to point out that one of our listeners had a theory about the baby mechanic, and I thought baby mechanic was a pretty nice little turn of phrase. But my point was, like, this doesn't make sense. What do you mean your baby works on cars? She went through and looked at the trial testimony, and her theory, and I think she's right, is that it's a typo. So she says it's something like, my baby did work on cars or something like that. And she said, what if it was supposed to say my baby's dad? Worked on cars. So dad became did, completely changed the context of it.
Got it.
Because then some other listeners looked it up and found out, I believe that her son was 2 years old at the time of the murder. So clearly she wasn't saying that her son did it. So I think that's what happened. I just wanted to clear that up because she put that out there. And I'm like, that I just thought it was just nonsense.
Yeah.
But it was like, it's probably just a typo. I think that's what happened.
Well, good catch by our folks, and also understandable that you would interpret it that way because so much of this feels a little bonkers.
Before we move on, you talk about good catch. I really, it's bothered me. We have that diagram up in the studio or up in the office that has the 3 times on it. And I think that or the 3 numbers that we don't know, we thought there were times where they could have been addresses.
Yeah.
The piecing that together to realize that those were the drive tests, that's big for me, at least, because that has really been weighing on me. Seeing that diagram, seeing those numbers that we don't know what they mean, but that makes a whole lot of sense when you realize that that's the drive times.
Well, and I'm almost sure of it. And that was the way I described it in the episode, is like precisely how that happened. We were just sitting here. I think Erica was editing something and I was writing, and I went to go look because I wanted to somehow describe how far away the house was from the 2 houses were. And I was thinking, oh, that address was in that diagram. And I walked over to the board and looked at it, and I was like, wait a minute. That's why that house is on the diagram. Those are the 3 tests. And then I remembered in the case file, I thought it was odd that diagram was in a different part of the file from the other 2 sketches. They were not together. Those 3 sketches weren't together. They were in different parts of the file. Matter of fact, I believe the sketches we have came from the prosecutor's file, not from the murder book. The actual crime scene sketches. So now it's like, because they were done at different times. And we thought, and actually, even when I sent that diagram to the officer that did the other sketches, when I first sent it to him, I was like, hey, can you look at this? Do you know what these times are? And he first said, I don't think I made that sketch. And I was like, well, here's all 3 of them. And the handwriting looks identical, almost identical. And then he's like, oh yeah, I guess I did. I remember the incident, but I don't remember what those numbers were for. We'd have to look them up. But then when I figured, so that was kind of coming back to they were stored in different spots. When I first sent them to Matt, he said that he doesn't think he drew that sketch. And then turns out I think he didn't draw that sketch. I think he was right the first time.
Well, actually, I just really quickly, because that takes us to, I'm going to just insert quickly in a question from Lynn. Lynn says, okay, if the crime scene sketch is actually the drive test, can you just clarify for us what sketches do we have and what, if any, are from the crime scene that night? Like,
nothing good. So there are a total of 3 sketches, and they're all on our website. There's the diagram that I had originally put up that was in the original murder book that I got from McGinnis. There was this one sketch, and all it showed was a layout of like the streets, the crime scene, 753 Broadway, and it had those times written on the side. That's all we have for that. And then there are 2 other sketches that are actually signed off by Matt Waters, who was a state trooper. One of them is an exterior layout of but it doesn't show where the car was, which kind of drives me crazy. But it just shows like the streets and where the house is and stuff like that. And then the other one is of the inside of just the hall, what I call the foyer. They call it a hallway. That just shows the layout of that hallway and the stairs and where the bullet holes were. That's all we have. We have no crime scene photos, nothing. That's all we have. I also, as long as we're kind of correcting stuff. So Erica right now is working on next week's episode where we're going to be covering the all the physical evidence that was used in the trial to convict Jody. And we were kind of going through the lab testing of the bullets. I still do not understand this. And Zach, help me out here because I don't know if you can understand it. But remember back when I was going over McKee, who was the crime scene investigator's report and testimony, and I said he keeps mixing up and going back and forth between the word shell casings and bullets, because he said he found 2 bullets by the body, 2 bullets by the car, and then later was like there were shell casings here and there. Well, then we were going through it, and we're going to get into all this in depth in the report, but I don't like leave things hanging out there that are incorrect and any longer than we need to. So Erica's pulling together all the files about the firearms expert that examined the shell casings and the bullets, and he was talking about the striations on the 5 bullets they found. And we were like, what? It just we kind of came across it as happenstance. And I'm like, 5, there's only 2. What do you mean 5 bullets? There's only 2 bullets. She said, it says here there's 5 bullets. And then she had remembered from reading that she's got a steel trap or memory. She's like, no, I think that they got, they were able to match 3 of them and 2 of them were damaged, 2 damaged or something, but there was 5 bullets. I was like, well, there was one in the windowsill, and then there was the one that went through the stairs and was found in the little storage room underneath. Those are the only 2 bullets that were found. There weren't any found in Mario's body. And I, well, maybe I was wrong about that. So then we went back to the autopsy and examined those. And sure enough, entrance and exit wounds, no bullets found in his body. It was like, where the hell are the other bullets? And then as I went back to his trial testimony and counted them, and sure enough, there was the one in the windowsill, the one that went through. And he says there was a bullet on the floor next to the body. And I think 2 bullets out by the car. But which I assumed he meant shell casings because he described them just laying on the ground.
Huh. Yeah.
But then their actual, meaning the lead slug, the part that comes out of the gun, the bullet, apparently one of them was laying on the floor next to the body. What? And 1 and 2, I think, were laying on the ground out by the car. So first of all, my correction when I said he seems to be mixing up the term shell casing and bullet, he wasn't. Those were bullets. How that happens is baffling to me. I've seen it. I've responded to a gunshot suicide before, and I actually was the one that found the bullet, but it had like gone through a paneling wall, hit a it had lost enough velocity by that point. It hit like a heating duct, and I saw the dent in the heating duct, and then found. But even then, it was just like crumpled up little bit of bullet that was left in the gun.
Yeah,
there would be damage to it. I mean, if it was discharged into anything, so like the ones outside, I could maybe understand it being discharged into the ground. The ground is going to absorb that. It's not going to damage the round to the effect that it would like entering a body or entering a hard surface. But the ones inside, I mean, I don't understand how they could be there without being damaged.
Well, and I thought the same thing about the ones on the outside, but it didn't say like they dug them up.
Right.
It sounded like they were just laying on the ground. And of course, that's one of the things that Erica's searching for in the prosecutor's file, because it's not in the murder book, but like it says in the murder book in McGinnis's report that Scott I remember the last name was McGee, the crime scene investigator, that he wrote his own full supplemental report on the crime scene investigation. I don't have that, so I'm hoping it's buried somewhere in the prosecutor's file because that's much bigger. Because I don't know, like, did they take a metal detector out there? Like, how the hell did they just find 2 bullets laying on the ground?
Yeah, that's
Wow.
very strange. That's very strange to me. To find them laying on the ground, like you said, if you didn't dig them up or anything like that, I mean, they could be laying there, but it seems like there would be damage if you didn't just discharge them into the ground. Unless you discharge them up, I mean, very unlikely that they're going to come down anywhere near the scene. I mean, you'd have to be the slightest bit off of discharging it straight up is going to send it who knows where.
Yeah.
And just Oh, sorry. I was just as a person who doesn't know anything about guns, is there any way they could be unspent? Like, is there any way they could be referring to like bullets that fell out of someone's pocket, like unspent bullets?
I don't think so because they were testing them for striations, meaning
No,
they
there you
went
go.
through a gun.
I got nothing.
But like even the one that I found, and this is what's, and I think Zach will agree. What I find odd about this, the bullet that I found in that suicide situation, I found it because it had gone through the person's body, then it went through a paneling wall. That took enough of the punch out of it that when it hit the heating duct, it just dented it and didn't penetrate it and dropped it. The point being, after it was through the body, if there's not something there to stop it, it's still going to keep going for a pretty long way.
Yeah.
It's not like a 45 caliber bullet. If you get shot in the chest, is going to go through your body, and then after it exits, just drop off, just fall down.
Right.
Like it went off a cliff. It's going to keep going.
Right.
It is going to go. I mean, the 45 is a heavy round, so it is a slow moving round. It doesn't quite have the velocity that people realize. A 9mm has a lot more velocity. I mean, truthfully, a 22 has a lot more velocity. So a 45 is, I mean, it's a heavy round. It packs a thud, but it does not travel as fast as people think. So, I mean, I could see it drop. It still is not going to drop like it drops off a cliff, but it's not going to go as far.
Feet.
It's still going to go 50. You're right. Absolutely. Yeah. It's still going to go down past the subject you're shooting. But I mean, it's still going to drop off pretty quick, but I don't think it would just be laying there like that. Especially, again, I'd have to know where it was in the yard. That's just very strange to me. And the ones inside, they have to be damaged. If they're inside at all, even if it's slow enough, it's going to hit a wall. It's going to hit. So there's a reason it's inside. It's going to be damaged.
Yeah, and there were a couple of them that were too damaged. I don't remember if it was 2 or 3 that were too damaged to test. But also remember, as far as damage, right? So the one went through the fascia, the wood fascia of the stairs. Mm-hmm. The other one was embedded in wood. So I don't know. So anyway, we're going to get into all that. I just wanted to make sure.
Wasn't there a round that went through his upper arm as well?
Yeah.
I mean, that would really damage a bullet, hitting that bone.
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, we're going to get into all that when we get into the episode next week. We were just in here thinking about things that needed to be corrected. And that was one I just remembered that conversation happened yesterday, and it was kind of baffling.
Yeah. Well, let's get into some more listener questions. A lot of people have some questions about, Victoria, how all of that went down. Let's start with Robert. Robert says Victoria described the murderer as tall and thin in the first police interview right after the murder. Did anyone else also meet that description, or is it just very conveniently that Jody was the only person who would have met that description?
I don't know. I don't think that Carvale quite meets it. I think Carvale was shorter. That's one of the things I meant to look up, but I know that he was much more dark skinned than Jody was. But yeah, I don't think that he was tall. I think Jody's the only one that kind of fits that description, that as far as the people that we know that are connected to the case.
Okay. And then Valeria added to that, do we know for a fact that Jody had their hair in a ponytail in November 2001? I've seen a photo where they appear to have cornrows, but I don't know when that was taken. And she says, I won't even go into how difficult it may have been for Victoria to see whether someone had a ponytail in the circumstances as they've been described.
Yeah, I believe Jody did have a ponytail when they were arrested the next day.
Okay. Julia says, my question was going to be, how did Victoria describe the murderer during her 911 phone call, since she saw the figure fleeing while on the phone with the operator? But based on other comments you made, it sounds like we don't even have a record of exactly when the call was made, let alone the contents. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that was one of the main things that I filed for in our original FOIA was we always try to get it, but primarily because of this. Because when I read the trial testimony that she said she called 911, or one of her reports that she called 911 she saw the person running away, while she was on the phone to 911. I want to hear that tape, because there is no way She's talking to 911, sees the killer running away, and doesn't say, "I see him running away right now.
Well,
He's
yeah.
headed here." Like, yeah, that I came to the conclusion I came to when you heard it in the episode. When I got to the end, this whole thing was with most issues like this, where you go like trial testimony that varies from initial statement, and then we kind of see how these things evolved. You kind of generally assume the initial statement was probably the true one, and then we lead up to it. But then it was like the trial testimony was so far away from the original statement and weird details that don't matter. Like, a couple people ask, like, why would she change those details? They don't matter. I think she changed those details because they don't matter, because she was the story. I don't think there was ever a true story.
Mm-hmm.
That's what got me, if she had told the original story and that's actually what happened, I think her trial testimony, if she was going to change something, would have changed the parts that had utility to be changed. But if the original story was complete made up nonsense to begin with, and now a year later she doesn't remember exactly what nonsense she said the first time, so she's making up new that's I don't know that, but that's the feeling that I get. And then when you start to try to track what she's saying in that first statement, and even that doesn't add up. For example, like Zach just pointed out, she says, "Oh, I saw the person running away while I was on the phone to 911." I don't believe that, because I think in the dispatch it would have said, there's a shooting, the suspect is tall, because they didn't go off. The police didn't go off looking for a tall, thin man that night. They didn't go look for a car with a loud exhaust that night. They were sitting there on the scene. They had no idea who or what they should be looking for. There's no way that she saw that while she was on the phone to 911. And if that part is made up, then that means for some reason she's making up a story, and it makes me wonder why.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned that you didn't necessarily say that this would be the reason for her, but I believe you put it kind of near the context of someone else who said, I have a lot of information and I do not feel safe revealing any of it." So I
Right.
think the implication would be perhaps she from the very beginning had a reason to be afraid to tell any kind of a story that was close to the truth. Is that kind of what you're getting at? Or there could be more than one reason?
I don't think I'm getting at anything. I think I'm just getting at I believe there must be a reason
Mm-hmm.
why the story was made up. I'm not wanting to speculate on what that reason might be without any evidence one way or the other. But it just seems like that's a crazy thing to do when your friend just got killed right there. Why are you making up a story?
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, Liz says, is Victoria one of the people on your list of people you're not supposed to contact at this time? I would love to hear her version of the story as she would recollect it today.
She is on a no contact list for right now.
Okay.
And I can't really get into all that, but just to say that I've not been ordered to do anything. I've been asked not to talk to a couple of particular people.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
Victoria's one of them.
Yeah. Understood. Okay. So for those of you who had questions about where that ask is coming from, and more details on that, that's just not something that we can go into at this time.
Correct.
Great. Okay. Kelly says, about 44:15, that's 44 minutes into the episode, Bob states that Victoria's first interview with Detective McKinney was at 12:30 a.m. Is that time noted in McKinney's report? If the BHPD claimed that the murder happened around 12:30 a.m. and Takamoto states in his report that several minutes went by after the shots before the 911 call came in, noting the actual address, how can the murder have happened around 12:30? McKinney would have to have been dispatched, drive to the scene, assess the situation, tend to the victim, and or confer with other officers on the scene, and then interview witnesses.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you go back a few episodes, we kind of broke that down in detail. I think episode 2 or 3, that not only does he say interviewed Victoria at 12:30, he says that he was dispatched to the scene by the officers that were already at the scene at midnight. So yeah, that McKinney's timing is one of the reasons why it seems pretty clear that this murder did not happen at all at 12:40. That it had to have happened before midnight.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, just another situation where I know I harped on this a little bit last week, but it's got to be really if what's happening is certain pieces of information are being extracted from what's available to you or what would be available to someone who would be looking for discrepancies. It's a lot of cleanup to have to do, and you still have to leave some stuff in there. If that is what's going on, that's a lot to juggle. And so seeing these documents that creep in that suggest the actual times of the crime, it's like, uh-oh, might have missed something there. Almost like redacting things, like, uh-oh, that's unfortunately now that's in there. So this information is available and can be checked against whatever we can check it against, you know?
Yeah, that's what it seems like to me. And like I said, I've got a couple leads that I'm kind of calling in favors, and so it's kind of I keep kind of prodding like, how we coming on that, and still working on it. But I'm confident that we're going to be able to pin down the exact time of the call, and I need to make a trip to Tacoma Frozen Foods to see if I can pin down that time, because that whole thing with Lenny doesn't strike me. When I was reading his testimony, like Lenny Williams strikes me as an honest guy. Like, he doesn't seem like he's on the, and truthfully, like, he didn't help the prosecution much at all. Like, when the prosecutor was, and again, and this is not a season 15 thing. This is an every season thing. I always say the reason I want recordings, the reason I want transcripts, the reason I want trial transcripts is because I want to see what the witnesses are actually saying, not what the police are saying they said. And in this case, you have McGinnis's report that says, and that's, again, these are up on the website, that when Lenny heard the car, he was positive that was the car he heard on the crime scene. When we hear him actually testifying to it, he goes, it was similar. And they tried to push him again on it. He's like, it's just similar car. It was not nearly as strong as that. But the point being, like, I'm real curious about figuring out what time he actually got off of work that night. And I would love, my hope is to be able to couple, if I can find out when he got off work that night and tie that in with when we know the murder happened that night, because then that will answer so many questions.
Oh,
so
yeah.
say, for example, we're able to prove without question 100% the murder happened at, say, 11:49 p.m. And then we find out that Lenny Williams did indeed get off work at midnight. Well, his testimony's a lie, it's wrong, it's incorrect, it's irrelevant for sure. That's it. Or, we find out the murder happened at 11:49 and find out that he actually got off at 11 p.m. Now it's like, well, how did he end up saying midnight, and why did he end up saying midnight? So like, I think these are obtainable. I think it's obtainable information is what I'm getting at, that we should be able to put a pin on some of this stuff.
Gotcha. Joni also is interested in, you mentioned it a little while ago, the person that you spoke to who says that they have more information on it, that they know who's responsible for this. I think Joni's question is not just specifically about that person, but also just about those situations that you might find yourself in, where someone comes forward to you, has information, or that now they say they have information. You may not know what that information is. What do you do with that other than listen and hope for the best?
I mean, listen, hope for the best, and then try to work with. So the information came to me through a third party, and I'm trying to work on. There's you hear things like, I'll pray on it, but I'm not. I'm terrified that if I tell you exactly what I know, what they were willing to say is, it was, as I put it, they said, it's not that dude he was talking about on the podcast. That's not who did it. I know who did it, but would not name that name. And I think in Joni, she's like, well, do you turn that information to the police? First of all, I don't have anything to turn over to the police because I don't have a name, right? I just have a witness. Any actionable information that I get on a case does go directly to someone in authority. I will tell you in this case that if this person came to me and said, I was there, I saw it, and this is the person that did it, and I'm willing to testify, I'm sure as fuck not giving it to Dan McGinnis.
Understood.
That will be going directly to I will personally march into the Attorney General's office and hand it to them and let them deal with it.
Yeah.
So the more and more, I don't want to get into this.
Yeah.
The episode that's coming Sunday, the more and more I hear, the more there's no chance in hell that I would turn that information over to him.
Yeah, got it. Well, Jessica says, can you clear up exactly what was going on with Jody's car at the time of the murder? I thought there was a mention that it was being fixed at the time. If so, was it proven, or did the defense even try to bring that up at trial?
We're going to get into that part of, so next week's episode, as I mentioned, is going to be like the physical evidence from trial. What came up. The car is one element of that episode that we're working on right now. So Erica's still working on the research and writing on that, and I have an interview scheduled. I've already talked to Jody about it, but I have an interview scheduled with Jody later this week, so we can have them explain what exactly was going on with the car. We do know there was a brake problem. The brakes were being fixed. That was, and we'll get into all of that next week.
Got it. Okay. Teresa says McGinnis lost his notes early in the investigation and had to ask Dora Miles for the name of the guy that also claimed to have heard something, Lenny Williams. How in the world does an officer lose his notes about a murder investigation? And was that challenged at trial by the defense attorney?
No, it wasn't. Of course, it wasn't challenged at trial. I don't even know if I don't think the defense attorney even read the whole file, which is not even 100% their fault because of the circumstances. He was put onto it real late in the game. I think there was a continuance to push it back a little bit. Wasn't enough to fully investigate. Either he's really bad at cross-examining people or he hadn't fully read in on the case. Jody says that the attorney, like throughout the trial, was asking them, like, what, when someone was testifying, who this person is, and trying to get information about them during the direct examination so they could prepare for cross-examination. Because I mean, look at Victoria with her changing story.
Yeah, that was a really frustrating part of the episode for sure. When you pointed out here was this golden opportunity to impeach her testimony in either direction, like it's a win-win. And
I cannot understand for the life of me why he didn't do that. He said, "Well, didn't you say that there was plastic on the windows?" Nope. No, there wasn't. She gives this whole explanation. There couldn't have been plastic on the windows because I couldn't see through that plastic. Didn't you say that on the night of the murder? Nope. You sure? Nope. Okay.
What about?
No, you hand her the report and say, "Would you read this right here?"
Yeah.
Because she either has to say, "I was lying," or "That's not what I said," which means McGinnis is lying. Either way is a win for the defense.
Right.
And they just left it lay there. I know we were talking about cross-examination, but what specifically was the question about? I forgot.
Oh, you already answered it. The question of whether or not there was any challenge to various notes being lost or that kind of thing.
But so on that topic, no, that's another one. And depending on your perspective, you're going to believe whatever you're going to have a bias in one direction or the other. And so I admit my bias on this, but my bias is pretty backed up by about a million other things in this case. So Dan McGinnis, if you're listening to this, you mean to tell me that on the night of the murder, a witness told you that or whatever the next day, whatever it was, they told you, "We heard a car speed off and it had a loud exhaust and I could identify it if I heard it." And you didn't fucking put that in a report? You didn't think you should document that at all? You just kept it in a note that then you magically lost, and then 3 months later a light bulb goes off and you're like, "Hey, I need to find this guy." You mean to tell? That's all I can say. Like, come on.
I'd love to hear if there's another explanation for that.
So to go on to Victoria's story for a second, I have a very hard time with her tracking the car all the way around the house, essentially. Especially, well, I mean, no shit, but especially the fact that I drove past it. I've gone down, I've looked at this, and Broadway is not I wouldn't say it's a super heavily traveled street, but it is a more heavily traveled street than people realize, I think. There's a lot of traffic on Broadway. Again, it is a residential street, but it is a heavily traveled residential street.
Yeah, there's cars going by constantly. And then even just the layout that you've been there, Zach. So the house that's there now was not there now. And so the crime scene was just one lot further to the south.
Yep.
So it was a little bit closer to Clay Street. But so imagine, and it was built the same, long and narrow like that. And so you imagine a house that's facing out onto Clay Street, or excuse me, a window facing out onto Clay Street. You're on the other side of the house, on the north side of the house. And by trial, you've noticed this car as it's turning onto Clay, so much so that you get up from your video game or watching TV with your kids or alone, whatever you're doing, and you walk across the house to look out the window to watch it driving down Clay. And now it stops, I guess, so she could see it didn't originally, so you can see the taillights. And then as it continues past and you can't see it anymore, then you go all the way to the back room of the house to look out the back window to see the car park in the alley. You're so suspicious Like, first of all, like you said, that doesn't track. And then a few minutes later, she hears Mario arguing with somebody and gunshots, or she hears him arguing and doesn't think. I just thought it was Andre. You didn't think it was the guy that just got out of the fucking car?
Yeah. The other thing that in her story, that car has to stop on Clay, right? In her story, because from being there myself and seeing it, from where you turn off Broadway to the alley is a very, very short distance.
Mhm.
You are not seeing anything from there, from the corner to the alley, easily. It is maybe 100 feet. I mean, it is a very short distance.
Yeah, so so if you imagine this, when you guys do look at the diagrams, or you see like the house, what it looks like, this long, narrow, rectangular house, there is a very short front yard and then Broadway, and then there is a very short backyard and then the alley. So that's how far apart they are. When the car is traveling down Clay to go between Broadway and the alley, this is where Zach's talking about. That's how long. It's the length of the house plus, I don't know, 30 feet total.
Yeah, not much. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, like it almost has to stop for you to be able to get to the kitchen in time to see through the not plastic window now and see the car.
Right. So many problems with this. Steve says, just wondering in general, you make the reference to the person that said, somebody knows something somebody isn't comfortable saying. He's just wondering in general, has the podcast been making waves in the Benton Harbor area? And have there been other people reaching out? I think you mentioned in a previous episode or in a previous follow-up that you have had some contact from new folks. What's that been looking like since the last couple of episodes have aired?
A lot of it has just been, well, I mean, the interview that I was speaking earlier about today, that came from that. And a lot of it is stories like is situations like this. It's people in the community that are desperate for change. They're desperate for something to happen, and they want their stories heard. Ayana, the person I interviewed today, came and she's just like, I need this story to be heard. And I'm just part of what I'm dedicated to myself to do is to let those stories be heard. So a lot of it's that the people in the community there that I've spoken to, and that have come around that, and that I've made contact through other people that have sent messages on to me. They're just happy somebody's telling the story, and somebody is putting some exposure onto what's going on in that city, and they just want something to change. Every conversation I've had, when Angelique was here for a few hours a couple weeks ago, Ayana here today, the conversation ends. So what do we do now? How do we make that change happen? And that's what I'm hoping that we can be a part of.
Well, and on the other side of that, I do know that it's making waves and people are talking, because I have had a few officers talk to me about the podcast. One of which wanted me to clarify, early in the season, we talked about that you just don't see officers patrolling Benton Harbor, which you just don't see officers just randomly patrolling. And they said the reason you don't see officers patrolling is because at any given time, there are dozens of calls holding that need response. Mm-hmm. So the officers don't even have time to get to patrol.
Yeah. To me, the contrast was, and what was said to me by the people that live there was, it seems like when there is time to patrol, like I said, when I was eating lunch in the mason jar, mm-hmm. I saw them patrolling around. You know what I mean? So like, I get it. I know they're busy. I get that. And I know that and they're also, there's not a lot of cars on the road.
And let me be frank, I will 100%. The officer that told me this is not a Benton Harbor police officer, right? Yeah. So they're not defending them by any means. They're just putting it out there saying the reason you don't see them is they're at any given time, there's so much going on that they don't have enough units to do anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is true. I know their resources are limited. It just seems like when they do have for that officer, if they're listening, when they do have the time to patrol, the places that they seem to be, and the way the perception of the community is as well. Plus what I witnessed myself is that when they do have the time to patrol to keep an area safe, they're keeping the arts district safe. They're not keeping the neighborhood safe.
Got it. Valeria says, I found a newspaper article reporting that on the 25th of May of 2002, a few weeks after the car reconstruction and a few weeks before the preliminary court hearing, there was a fire at 784 Broadway. Is it worth trying to find out more about it, or do we just put it down to a strange coincidence / carelessness?
We won't be able to find anything about it because remember, they shredded a bunch of files. We can't, and the problem is that would have been a fire department file, so we could get a little more information about it from the fire department. But the fire department and the police department have merged, and they're now one unit that is still controlled by McGinnis.
Oh, well.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's all I have for the questions for today's episode that we're discussing, but we do have a question about another case, something to do with the West Memphis 3.
Okay.
Do you want to go ahead and cover that?
Well, yeah, some people were just asking. Damien had tweeted out because this weekend was the 13-year anniversary of when they were finally released from prison. And he said that, they're hoping to have DNA testing done soon. And they're hoping to have results by the end of the year. And then Jason had tweeted something about that. And I think that's what the listener put in there was, why is Jason tweeting? I think she said that he's against the testing. That's not what he said. If that's what they thought he said. What he said was, why are we testing it at an I think an inferior or a lab that lacks the credibility that they want? Essentially, like he's wanting the testing done somewhere else. So I don't have the answer to that. I haven't talked to Jason in a while, and I know some stuff that's going on because I have some, but it's not all stuff that I can share. I don't get the impression. I get the impression that the testing is going to go through, and it's going to go for the MBAC testing. I don't know the motivations for and a lot of this stuff kind of came up when and I had said in the episode that when people were saying, well, Jason should be involved, and I said, well, Jason should file a motion. Like if he wants to be involved, he can be involved. Shortly after that, I think that there was no motion filed, but I think that he expressed interest in wanting to be involved in part of the process.
Got it.
Yeah, everything still goes. It sounds like things are still going to go through.
Got it. Yeah, that was actually I was giving you Jenna's question, who really was just more kind of like, hey, this is really cool. Is something happening on the court side of things that we didn't know about, allowing this to happen? Or is this, how much can we know publicly about what's going on behind the scenes? That's all.
Nothing's nothing's done until it's done. We've learned that with this case in particular. Especially. And one more thing that I want to address, I didn't make the list, but I saw that somebody had asked a question about essentially saying that I had stated that that Carvale Miles is one of the people that I've been asked not to talk to. And the question was, well, if that's the case, then why are you bringing up all this stuff and how the Miles family is connected? Because that's what's in the case file. I'm not giving you new information. So just understand that when I'm talking about Carvale, I'm just telling you what he told police, what the people around him told police, and what was testified to, because it's part of the case. So hopefully that answers that question. And I think with that being said, I'm pretty ready to be done with today. It's been a long one. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Remember, on Sunday, you have an interview coming. And then next week, we're going to be covering 3 elements of physical evidence that was testified to a trial regarding Jody. So we'll talk about that, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
Sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, bye, guys. Fuck.
All right. Zach, you push your button. You can hit stop on your record.
I botched that one.
Does everybody stop their recording?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm gonna end the live stream, folks, because we got a couple things we got to talk to, and I'm just, as I said, I'm kind of done with today. It's been a rough one. So we love you guys. Thank you for joining us, and we will talk to you all next week.
Bye.